This is a big piece on the offensive line. The Texans have had a great offseason. There's been some questionable moves in terms of some fans around the NFL didn't like the Laremy Tunsil trade. The CJ Gardner-Johnson trade I loved. You got rid of Kenyon Green. But the offensive line has kind of been the issue, not only all offseason, but all of last season, where CJ Stroud was the second most sacked quarterback in all of football. Now they go out and get a guard to kind of fill in on the offensive line. You know, Titus Howard is moving from guard to tackle, and this is a good signing. It's a nice veteran piece. But before we get into it, sub to the channel, please and thank you. We really do appreciate all the support. You guys have been killing it in terms of the likes and everything. So just thank you guys for really just supporting the channel. It's been a blast. Let's get to some Texans news. If you haven't seen it, Laken Tomlinson is now a Houston Texan, and it's honestly a good deal. He's a veteran guard, and it's just a matter of what can you do with the guys that you have left. You missed out on Will Fry, and I think it was a matter of the Texans just weren't able to figure it out in terms of in time in getting who they wanted for the time being. They got rid of Laremy Tunsil a little bit too late. I feel like they wanted to go after one of those bigger names in Will Fry or James Daniels, and they were on the phone, they got the call, and then about an hour later, they just didn't get the guy that they wanted. In my opinion, I feel like Will Fry was the big name that signed the big contract with the Vikings. Who knows if the Texans would have matched that or whatnot, but Tomlinson is a nice veteran. You have him on a cheap deal. The Shaq Mason trade that they did a couple years ago, they traded a late seventh, but the amount of money Shaq Mason was getting paid, and then for what he did last year to have double-digit sacks let up, that's the reason he's no longer on the team. So Tomlinson, he's a guard. He may be 33, but he's a solid player. $5 million a year, I'll take that. It's a prove-it deal. Why not? And I just looking at everything people have said about him, his PFF grade, it's pretty good. 62 overall, 65 pass grade, 59 in the rush. He's a very solid plug-and-play on the offensive line. 6 sacks allowed last year. The biggest thing with Tomlinson was he was a great player on the 49ers when he started his career. When he was a free agent and went to the Jets, that's where things kind of went downhill for him. He signed a 3-year, $40 million deal. I thought it was great at the time, and then he played horrendous on the Jets. Maybe that's not the right word for it, but he definitely kind of like declined a lot, and then the Jets didn't want him, so he goes to Seattle, and he plays pretty well, and this is just a great plug and play. Not to mention, DeMeco Ryans was his former coach back in San Francisco and back in 2017, so he does know him. I mean, why not bring him along on the team? He's somebody who is definitely going to protect CJ Stroud and wants to be there. 33 years old, and on the Seahawks last year, he was solid. He was a solid player. You have people talking about how good he was. Pretty good game for Tomlinson against some good D tackles, allowing some pressures, but he's a serviceable guard that will fit the scheme. He will be versatile, great versatility, and will help set a new culture. That was the biggest reason to why we traded Laremy Tunsil, was the culture was so bad. And DeMeco Ryans talks about how he wanted to kind of shift that. It was Ben Tunsil who had a captain on his chest. We talked about it in a past video. Please watch it. It's honestly the funniest thing I've ever done because I absolutely went on a rant. And it wasn't even the fact that I didn't want Tunsil. It was just I was so upset that every non-Texans fan out there hasn't watched Tunsil play, and the amount of pain that we've had to sit through as Texans fans, I'm sure you guys can relate. And it's just watching him commit 19 penalties, the false starts, the ineligible man downfield that lost us one of those games. It was just ridiculous. So it was definitely time to move on. You got rid of him at the right time. He was due a lot of money over the next 2 years, and you get rid of Kenyon Green, who was one of the worst first-round picks in recent history, for Nick Caserio. Zion Johnson would have been a better pick. But back to Laken Tomlinson, this is a good fit. I mean, why not bring a guy in who can... You look at last season, he was the 6th highest pressure rate amongst left tackles. He was pretty good. At least 300 pass blocking snaps and 11 sacks according to Next Gen Stats. 11 sacks is definitely something that you don't want to see. But 300 pass block snaps and 11 sacks is not bad at all. And especially when you had 6 sacks last year and then like 11 the past 2 seasons. I'm pretty sure that's what they were getting at. But Tomlinson can play, and when you look at what has been done for him on past teams, he's a veteran presence, he's a leader, and I think, honestly, he's a little better than Shaq Mason. He's still got some juice left in the tank. I was thinking we were going to get Kevin Zeitler, and it really wasn't a terrible idea, but 6 sacks allowed last year for a pretty solid guard. I mean, I'll take that any day of the week. The run blocking was a little bit lower than the pass blocking, and I think the run game is what the Texans are going to want to implement the most. I talked about it in a past video, but Donovan Jackson, the tackle on Ohio State, is likely to be on the lookout for a potential trade back situation for the Texans to draft him. If it's not Donovan Jackson on Ohio State, he's a good player. Do not get me wrong. He is 6'4", 320. He can play all around the offensive line, from what I've heard, and it's a great situation. Relatively average last season with the Seahawks, but he can be trusted. He can play snaps, and that was what we thought Shaq Mason was going to bring. And I was surprised they didn't cut him before last season because, yes, he did have a solid 2023, but he just kind of fell apart, and the injuries didn't help. But this is a new and improved offensive line. For anyone who's watching this that thinks the Texans are tearing apart the offensive line, Nick Caserio should be fired, I really do disagree, because half the players that are gone off of this team, they were the problem for whether it was Tunsil in one leadership and the penalties, and then that was a problem, and then the bad mindset. Green was just bad. He was bad. One of the worst tackles on the team, guards, but he was just not good. Very bust, but he's on the Eagles now. Maybe he can turn his career around. And then Shaq Mason, again, double-digit sacks, not good. So completely turn the offensive line around, put Titus Howard to left tackle. I really don't think he's as bad as people think he is. Some people are like, oh, Blake Fisher's better than him. I'm like, Blake Fisher was a rookie last year, so Fisher can only improve off of last season playing at right tackle. But I love the Laken Tomlinson signing. I would like a little bit more depth. I wouldn't have minded a Kevin Zeitler. But I think what's going to end up happening for the Texans is most likely you're going to see a couple guys move, right? You have Jarrett Patterson playing center. Juice Scruggs might move over to right guard. And I don't even hate that. It's just, again, you need some more depth, and that's where you draft at least 1 to 2 offensive linemen in the first 4 rounds, I believe. That's just my opinion. But you have 2 third-round picks from the Tunsil trade. I do wish they would have gotten more. That could be used for a potential trade-up. I do believe they'll probably trade back from 25 and take Donovan Jackson. I think it's a good pick. But yeah, the Texans definitely need to take a wide receiver in the draft as well. Let me know your thoughts on who the Texans are going to draft, if they're going to go after any more players. I'm interested to see and hear how many of you guys are thinking the Texans' offensive line is any good now, or if it's any worse because of losing Tunsil. So it's definitely a tough spot to be in for the Texans. I wasn't expecting this many kind of crazy moves. The Tunsil trade kind of caught my eye because I did say that was probably going to happen, but I didn't actually expect it to happen and them to go through with it. So crazy stuff for the Texans. Laken Tomlinson, welcome aboard. I saw it and I'm like, that's a solid play. I mean, really, all you needed is somebody. And Laken Tomlinson, he's not a nobody. He's not just somebody you find off of, the bagging groceries or the Kurt Warner's saying, but he's a great plug and play. There's a couple other guys I've been saying I want as depth pieces. I think Will Fry originally we were trying to go after, just didn't have the money. So you could see the Texans potentially go out and sign a couple guys on 1-year deals. You already re-signed a guard in Thomas for last season, so that was a good look for the Texans. But it's just a matter of what do you do before the draft, because there are a couple things that I'm shaking my head about, and it's just like, I'm not too sure about that. So the Texans, they did end up re-signing. Titus Howard is going to move to the left tackle spot. Blake Fisher is going to start at right tackle per Aaron Wilson. And more additions are expected to be added at the guard and center position in the next coming days. So I know I've probably said it every single video, but the Texans aren't done yet. There's still a couple guys they're looking after to try and fill out that center of the line. The interior O-line has been the worst part of the Texans, and we're going to have to look at a couple other options because it's not looking too good. thank you guys so much for watching. Again, leave down in the comments about everything Texans. Hit that sub button if you're new. 94% of you are not subscribed watching this, so would really appreciate it if you hit that sub button. Love all the support. Thank you guys. I really can't say that enough. I really do appreciate everyone who comments and likes and subs. So again, thank you so much for watching. So we will see you in the next video. Texans news. There's going to be a lot more coming very soon.